Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, you know, Peter, on Tuesday, President Biden, in his address to the nation, as his voice was already fading out, he started off by shouting, and then gradually his voice just fades out. But as his voice was fading out, he promised that America would not be doing any more nation building. That's it. We're out of the nation building business, which Americans have been promising ever since Vietnam, that they're not going to do this. Promise, that was it. We're never going to do it again. Well, this week, on the very same day, President Zelensky of Ukraine is visiting the United States. And of course, President Zelensky, even in his Oval Office meeting with President Biden, essentially said, I need a timetable for being admitted into NATO, and I need every penny you can give us in order to fight off the terrible Russians. And the United States and Ukraine issued the joint statement on the US-Ukraine strategic partnership. And of course, there we have supporting Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. The United States supports Ukraine's right to decide its own future foreign policy course, free from outside interference, including with respect to Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO. And then there's standing up to Russia's aggression, including the war in eastern Ukraine and its seizure of Crimea, has claimed more than 14,000 Ukrainian lives, destabilize Europe and the Black Sea region. And then he said that the United States does not and will never recognize Russia's purported annexation of Crimea, reaffirms its full support for international efforts, including in the Normandy format, aimed at negotiating a diplomatic resolution to the Russia-led conflict in eastern Ukraine. So, but then after all these promises, then we move on to the democracy, justice, and human rights. The United States and Ukraine are bound by universal values that unite the free people of the world: democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. And despite Russia's continuing aggression, Ukraine has made progress in implementing comprehensive democratic human rights reforms. And then we have the thing, what all the demands made on Ukraine, reforming the judiciary and combating corruption. So, building upon the passage of judicial reform legislation, Ukraine plans to overhaul its judicial sector in line with international best practices. Oh, that's nice. Advancing human rights. With US support, Ukraine will continue to advance respect for human rights, civil liberties, fundamental freedoms in accordance with international standards and obligation, as well as to fight racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and discrimination against LGBTQI+ community. And then we have the United States plans to invest in Ukraine's reform agenda.
Sounds like nation building.
So you can see basically the United States is taking over the running of Ukraine. I mean, it's basically whatever the sector, economy, justice, everything is now going to be run by the United States in exchange for what? That Ukraine will continue to be a kind of a battering ram against Russia. By any definition, this is nation building. This isn't a partnership of equals, despite whatever the title of this document is. This is basically Ukraine will become a wholly owned subsidiary of the United States and is going to run Ukraine. This is, I think, a very dangerous game that the United States is playing, because there's only so long that you can just fob off Ukraine's demands. Hey, let's go fight Russia. Let's you and Russia fight a war for us, because sooner or later pressure is going to build up. It already happened earlier this year, and America just managed to get itself off the hook at the last minute. Not sure it's always going to happen like that. Anyway, Peter, what's your take?
Well, I mean, you went through the declaration. I mean, what a farce. On every single metric, Ukraine is violating human rights, freedom of speech, property rights, selected political prosecutions. I get really angry when I hear 14,000 people have died. Yeah, who did? The Kiev government killed those people, not Russia.
Right.
They killed their own citizens. You've heard that before? They're killing their own citizens.
Yeah.
And we're on the wrong side again. Yeah, I mean, they threw him some chump change. You know, how much they spent on, on Afghanistan? $2.3 trillion.
Yeah.
Well, Zelensky went home with an extra 60 million. Okay.
Right.
Good for you. All right.
Yeah.
No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, is this a kicking the can down the road where, they know this nation building thing? I mean, it's a grift, number one. Most of the money goes in and comes right back. Okay. People lining their pockets. Do you think Hunter proofread and signed off on that declaration? Because he knows something about Ukraine. Maybe he's never been there before, but he knows how Ukraine works, okay? With prosecutors and boards and having foreigners on Ukrainian companies' boards. I mean, what a farce here. But I mean, also Biden and his people are putting themselves into a bind. Well, Zelensky, I mean, he's like at a casino right now. I mean, you really want to bet big? You're going to lose big, little guy, okay?
Right.
I mean, this is very dangerous.
I think so, right. Because remember, ever since that wretched Bucharest summit, we've been beset by these crises, first in Georgia and Ukraine, all because of that idiotic promise of NATO membership for Ukraine and for Georgia. And this goes on, and every single government in Ukraine comes and demands, when are you going to let us in? When are you going to let us in? And, and what does the United States say? Well, maybe not today, but, if you do behave nicely and, reform this and reform that, then we're going to have you in. You're essentially kicking the can down the road, as you say, but sooner or later, as with when you keep running up a debt, at some point the debt's going to come due, and then you're going to have a big problem on your hands.
Well, and you're also going to have a wag the dog situation, okay? I mean, there's so many tensions here. I mean, there's the Atlanticist crowd, the Atlantic Council, and NATO hawks. They don't give a damn a hoot, about reform in Ukraine. Who cares? Okay, get them in, okay? Right. Okay, and they're on the border there, so they're the ones who are going to take the punishment if anything goes wrong, okay? Right. In their nice air-conditioned office in Brussels, okay? Right. But I mean, and then, there's a certain point where, some leader in Ukraine is just going to say, I'm going to take the risk. They can't say no. They've invested too much.
Exactly. Okay?
And then you create this situation where, it's a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? And all I can tell you, George, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, is that would the Russians dare? Well, yeah, they would. I mean, if you tempt them enough, okay, and then Ukraine as a state, as we know it now, collapses, okay, and then Russia becomes a pariah. Fine, but that's already baked in. Right. That's baked in.
Yeah, no, I think so. And so what we had at the start of the year, Ukraine was reading the signals from Washington. They say, hey, Trump's gone. We now have a very, very anti-Russia administration. They made all these commitments to Ukraine. Why don't we chance it? Why don't we mount an offensive? I mean, the Russians were taking this very seriously. They thought the Ukraine was planning to mount an offensive against the Donbass. That's why they moved their forces, for these maneuvers. They were taking it very seriously. And so it was because the government in Kiev, they thought, hey, we've now got an administration that is going to look sympathetically on what we do. And for a while, it did look as though they were looking sympathetic. Suddenly, they suddenly woke up in Washington. Where the hell are we going? We're going to send some warships at this very juncture to the Black Sea. I mean, we're going to have a shooting war on our hands. And they very quickly backed away. But that doesn't mean that Ukraine has backed away. They're still banging that drum. He goes to the Oval Office and actually tells Biden to his face, hey, when are you going to let us into NATO? We want in right now.
Yeah. And Zelensky knows that, going back to the tensions that I made reference to, is that he knows that there are elements within the NATO coalition, political coalition, that are kind of give him a nod and a wink, and the president has to say this because we have to create unity with the alliance and all that. But don't worry, we're pushing. I mean, the pro-Ukrainian lobby is very, very active right now in Washington. Okay, I mean, particularly now with Zelensky doing, going to the Atlantic Council, probably visiting Victoria Nuland at brunch. So I mean, this is
all the congressional gas bags.
Yeah, I mean, but the interesting thing too is the backdrop with Afghanistan and all of that. Trying to sell people this is going to be very difficult. But then again, the administration probably won't try very hard to sell. They'll just do it by not clandestinely, but just they're not going to make a big deal about it. Stealth was the word I was looking for. So I mean, but all in, everybody, this is very bad news.
I think very bad news. And Saki, she was asked, because of course that's all that people ask when the topic of Ukraine comes up. It is, when are you going to let Ukraine into NATO? Ukraine wants in. Why? What's holding it up? And so she said, well, it isn't really all entirely up to us. So they tried to shuffle the blame on Germany and France, but hey, you're the one who's encouraging them. Germany and France hasn't been encouraging. You're right. In fact, they were the ones as the crisis. Was it in April? The crisis, in April, the crisis seemed to be escalating. Exactly. They got on the phone to Zelensky. Back off. What the hell are you doing? The Russians really mean business.
Yep. So this is where it is right now, but it's up a notch. And like I said, there are plenty of people that are whispering in Zelensky's ear to keep pushing hard. Joe's weak, Joe's indecisive, and he's looking for a foreign policy win. Okay, as I lowered my voice. Okay,
exactly.
You're right. This is what's going on right now. And George and I said this last week, 10 days ago. We had Glenn Deason on, I think it was, we were talking about, America retreating. No, when you have a great power that is wounded, they take more risks. And Ukraine is the prime one. Secondary is going to be Taiwan. We're keeping an eye on both.
Right. No, I think it's good. And given that you essentially have a lightweight administration, you really don't have any.
And Zelensky's a lightweight.
Zelensky's, of course, a lightweight, which is why he sort of comes in as the peace candidate, the reconciliation candidate, and in no time at all, he's now basically out-hawked, the hawkish Poroshenko. So yeah, that just shows what a lightweight he always was. But you got Blinken. I mean, are you going to rely on Blinken to the guy who's spending his time in the Hamptons while everything was collapsing in Afghanistan? You're going to rely on him to rein in Zelensky? Worked last time doesn't mean it's going to work next time.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, a game of chicken here is that these people are weak. And so you think you can outwit them. Well, intellectually, you might be able to outwit them, but you might destroy your country in the process, okay? I mean, you can win, but what does win mean in this context? It means the destruction of your country, okay? That's a very bizarre definition of winning. It's like Joe Biden saying, we got out of Afghanistan, a success. Okay,
right. And it's very
Orwellian.
That's right. You remember, there was always an option that the United States can take with Ukraine, which is, why don't you try and work something out with with people in the Donbass? You look, Russia is your neighbor. Don't you think it might make sense for you to try to work something out with your neighbor? You're going to have to live with Russia forever. So doesn't it make sense for you to try to work something out? They could easily have said something like that. Instead, they just keep encouraging and encouraging. Oh, we stand with you. We will never recognize, Russian annexation. Hey, Russia's to blame for everything. Russia, the worst possible message you can deliver.
Russia is to blame for everything. But please, would you extend the energy transit?
Yes,
please.
Pretty please, yeah.
I mean, there's no leverage. See, This is one of the things that they've created. See, a smart leader, a real diplomat, always makes sure that he or she always makes sure that you have assets that you can move on the board. And see, these clowns at Foggy Bottom under multiple administrations They keep taking all the pieces off the board. So it's just like, well, either we have peace or war, nothing in between.
Right.
Let me rephrase that: a cold war or a hot war. Okay,
Right.
this is asinine. This is absolutely ridiculous what they're doing. And if you keep assets in play, then you can come to some kind of conclusion, and maybe even some kind of face-saving.
Well, the problem is that their view of Ukraine is we want to use it as a battering ram. We want to make, the only reason we take any interest at all in Ukraine, other than we can make some money there, but other than making money, is that it's a pain in the neck for Russia. It's making life difficult for Russia. That's the only reason, and that's the rationale for their policy, encouraging Ukraine, but not so much as it leads to war, and thus might drag America in. That's a dangerous game to play. It always has been in history. You encourage someone, but at the last minute pull back.
I think we saw that 20 years in Afghanistan, George.
Right.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. This is how skilled these people are. You can live in your bubble all you want, but it can take one incident, one pin to punch that bubble, and you are in territory that you don't want to be in. Exactly. Nobody wants to be in.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. Everyone, we're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Yesterday, George did a live stream. We have a tradition now of doing Zoom chats with gagglers. You can actually record it if you want. We can put it on our page. The store is up. Nice things there. Tomorrow, George, you want to do it?
Tomorrow, we're doing YouTube super chats. Which will be at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please join us. Live stream our questions, contribute whatever you can into the super chats. It's always very pleasant to get a little bit of money, a little bit of appreciation. So, but just join us, and we're going to have a very interesting dialogue.
And next week we'll do a couple of the questions are accumulating. We'll do a couple of Q&As for everybody. Okay, questions are always very interesting.
Always fun, always interesting. Yeah.
So I look forward to tomorrow. Basically at this time, yes, tomorrow.
Yep.
And put that on your calendar.
Exactly. And tip jar. We talked about the tip jar. No, it doesn't matter. Tip jar, Buddy's tip jar. It's so like empty.
Dog.
Exactly. So empty. We can just sort of listen to the sea when we put it to our ears. But it could use a little bit of ka-ching in. And look at that face. You can't say no to that. He needs some replenishment. So, but seriously, whatever you can contribute, we're very much appreciative. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.